One topic that has been pretty prevalent throughout all of this Packers offseason has been what is going to happen with Jaire Alexander. And the fact that the Packers have been actively trying to trade him made me think that they were ready to fully move on from Jaire Alexander. And now looking at what happened in the draft, I do think it should have some kind of impact as to what happens with Jaire. And the thing with Jaire, he missed a lot of time because of the injuries. If that wasn't the case, I don't think what's happening right now would be taking place. But now looking at what happened in the draft, the Packers did not draft a cornerback till round 7 in Micah Robinson. And because of that, it does make me wonder if the best option the Packers have now is sticking with Jaire Alexander. And before this draft, I wasn't opposed to keeping Jaire. I thought it would have been a fine decision just because you don't save that much money by moving on from him. I guess it depends on how you look at it. $6 million saved if cut or released before June 1st, $16 million after June 1st for the 2025 cap. But then if you do move on from him after June 1st, then you have about a $10 million dead cap hit in 2026. And so I had the feel that the Packers were just ready to move on with their decision to sign Nate Hobbs. I thought they would draft a corner somewhat early. And so now with them not drafting a corner early, it does change things a little bit in my mind. But first off, I want to share what came out from Tom Silverstein of PackersNews.com Saturday night after the draft was over. He said this: a source familiar with the dealings between the Packers and Alexander said the Packers still were in the market to trade him and were waiting to see if a team might have interest after the draft. There is no plan for the Packers to bring Alexander back after deciding in February they were moving on and then shopping him to teams. So according to Tom Silverstein, the Packers are still trying to trade Jaire Alexander, and they were trying to see if someone might have interest after the draft. And he brings up once again, which he shared at the end of February, that there's no plan to bring Jaire back. And so even with the Packers not drafting a corner in the first 6 rounds, it still seems like the Packers want to part ways with Jaire and trade him. I do think, though, now looking at the Packers' depth chart, I think that it's probably smart to keep Jaire. You have Carrington Valentine, Keyshawn Nixon, Nate Hobbs, Javon Bullard, and that could be fine. That could be good enough. But when you have some injuries in 2025, I just think that the benefit of keeping Jaire on the roster, because when he's healthy, he still played really good football, would probably outweigh saving, $6 million in the 2025 cap. And so I guess in my mind, the question is, how adamant are the Packers on moving on from Jaire? Are they really so sold on their current corner room that they want to move on from him and they think saving that, $6 million for this year, $10 million off next year's cap, is it worth that to Brian Gutekunst to move off of Jaire? And I could see why he still would. And if the Packers do move on from Jaire at this point, that shows that the Packers are very, very confident in the current corner room. If they keep him, I think that shows that they think that, they still need someone like a Jaire there just in case there's some injuries. And so at this point, it still feels like they're going to move on from him just from these reports. And the one thing that did change my mind a little bit or make me just question things more is the fact that they didn't draft a corner early. Because I think if you drafted a corner round 1 or 2, you'd say, okay, I think you definitely would. I would say move off of Jaire. It would be worth it to save that money because if you draft a guy in round 1 or 2, you want him to be playing pretty much right away, and you wouldn't want, if that guy is your corner of the future, you wouldn't want someone ahead of him who maybe you have some questions about health-wise to take away a lot of snaps and development there. So I would have been pretty convinced if we were sitting here right now and the Packers used a first-round pick or second-round pick on a corner, I would be convinced that it would probably be a good idea to move off of Jaire at that point because, why would you draft a guy that high if you're planning to have him, behind some of these guys on the depth chart? I guess you still could have had Jaire in that corner out there and maybe benched Nate Hobbs, Carrington Valentine. But when you pay Nate Hobbs the money you paid him, I don't think you want him necessarily sitting on the bench. You probably want him at least starting out there at nickel corner. And so we still are going to sit around and wait to see what happens here. Jaire was taking part in the virtual, meetings the Packers had this past week. I did see that he'll get a $700,000 bonus by attending a certain amount of the offseason conditioning program. So he does have a reason to be here financially. And I have been seeing things, where he's followed. I think I saw he followed Matthew Golden after he was drafted. So are we going to get to a point that Jaire just ends up staying on the team? I honestly think at this point he should. I really think he should. I would still understand if they moved on from him and wanted to save that money for the future, if they're really confident in some of these guys here, like Valentine, Nixon, Hobbs, and Bullard. But at this point, not getting a corner early, I think just looking at a team perspective in 2025, would I feel better going into 2025 with Jaire on the roster? Definitely. Even though he has questions with the injury history, he's still a really great corner when he plays football. And so at this point, I hope he returns. I hope he stays. I think it's the best option for the Packers. And the question becomes in my mind, is Gutekunst, so ready to move on? Which it sounds like he is from these reports, that he wants to save that money on the cap in the future because he so much trusts these guys. It sounds like that's what's going to happen still. I'm still leaning towards him either trading him or releasing him. I assume release just because it seems like teams haven't been willing to trade, or we would have seen a trade by now. But at this point, I wouldn't be as shocked if he stayed on the roster. So those are my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. And if you want more Packers content, feel free to subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.